On to the latest COVID-19 numbers. The Health Ministry confirmed 310 new cases today, including 7 in the community. Of these, 3 are Singaporeans or permanent residents and 4 are work pass holders. There were also 6 imported cases.
The vast majority of the remaining cases are migrant workers living in dormitories. Today's count brings the total number of COVID-19 cases here to over 48,700. More details will be released later.
Now, a vaccine developed by Singapore's Duke-NUS Medical School and US pharmaceutical company Arcturus Therapeutics has received approval for clinical trials. That means the in-human trial for their lunar COVID-19 vaccine will be the first in Singapore.
Here to tell us more is the Deputy Director of the Emerging Infectious Diseases Program at Duke-NUS, Professor Ooi Eng Eong. Welcome, Prof, and congratulations on this milestone. Prof, lunar COVID-19 joins 24 other candidate vaccines worldwide that are undergoing clinical evaluation. How does this vaccine stand out from the rest?
Well, first of all, thank you very much and thanks for having me. This vaccine is basically it's a genetic material of the virus. It's a small part of the virus, but it's that part which is important for the virus to get into our cells. And so because we present this genetic material to the body, and then the body will then make the part, that fragment of the virus, and so then our immune system would see it and recognize it. Which is, in a way, this is what many other companies are also targeting, right? So they just present it in different way. Some give the genetic material, others give the actual fragment of the virus itself. The unique thing about what we're doing with Arcturus is that this genetic material that we're putting in will replicate. What that means is 2 things. One is that you need to give much less material, genetic material to begin with, right? So given a manufacturing product, the yield, whatever that we can get from one manufacturing run, we can give it to more people because less of it is needed per person. The second thing about it that I think is really important is that that's what exactly the virus does, right? It pumps its genetic material into our body, and then our body then makes the rest of replicates the virus, and then that's how it grows and it perpetuates itself. Our immune system needs to recognize that process, that this is a virus, because it needs to trigger the right genes to be turned on and the right genes to be turned off, so that the quality of the immune response then is directed against a virus, not against something else. Right? So I think with these 2 processes, I think that's why we are quite excited about what we've seen, and we're eager to move forward into clinical trials.
We understand the first study will involve 108 healthy adult volunteers. Moving forward, what are the most immediate steps, and how long will the process take from this point that you're at right now to developing a safe and effective vaccine?
So the first part of the clinical trial is to make sure that the vaccine is safe, right, and is well tolerated by people. What I mean by that is that there'll be minimal side effects, and whatever side effects we get is just mild, and it won't cause us any inconvenience. So that's the phase 1 trial, the 108 people that will test this in. What we also want to do is, because COVID-19 affects the elderly, the older people a lot more severely than the younger adults. So we also want to start with young adults, but then move to the older age group. The reason for that is that we want to first of all make sure that the vaccine is safe in healthy people first, before we then move forward into the more vulnerable groups. This whole process will probably take about 3-4 months. It'll be before the end of the year that we can go into a much larger trial. So that phase, or known as phase 3, will be when we ask whether the vaccine will protect us against COVID-19. So the first part is to say is to ask the question: is the vaccine safe? The second part is, does it work? And that part takes much longer for obvious reasons, because you need to now vaccinate thousands of people to know whether it will work. But it also depends on how many COVID-19 cases we have in Singapore and possibly the other parts of the world as well. I don't think it'll be a problem, but that's always a a variability that we have no control over. But a phase 1, we have control, and so that one we know 108 people will give us the answer that we need in about 3-4 months.
Right. Prof, as mentioned earlier, there are 25 candidate vaccines around the world, including yours. Is there some form of collaboration among groups, even if it's a race to find a COVID-19 vaccine?
I mean, in a way, information is being shared. So whichever company that have vaccine development effort that have gotten the right set of results, or at least mature enough, they will all publish it. And like we too will aim to do that. But we also working fairly independently, obviously because there's intellectual property and all that involved. But I think that aside, I think there's real advantage in working independently. The reason is because we don't know a lot about this virus, right? It is still fairly new. It's in Singapore for 7 months, coming to 8 maybe in the world. Maybe China has seen it for about a month or 2 longer, but it's actually a very short amount of time, and we have to acknowledge that there's a lot of things we don't know about this virus. And so the more we can work at this independently, the better it is, because then we are not putting all our eggs in one basket.
Are there benefits then for Duke-NUS to be at an earlier stage of development compared to the others?
Right. So in a way, there are advantages because the front runners have gone into early phase clinical trials. We can look at the results that they've gotten, and then we can that shapes our thinking as well as to how we should do our trials. I think one takeaway that I've come away with from the results that have come from other more advanced vaccines is that we can see what kind of results they have achieved in the clinical phase versus what we have seen in the preclinical phase. Because one of the big hurdles is this preclinical to clinical transition, right? So sometimes things look very rosy in the preclinical data in a lab where everything's very controlled. When you go into humans, then it's a completely different story.
Thank you very much for coming on the show, and of course, good luck in the whole process. That was Professor Ooi Eng Eong, Deputy Director of the Emerging Infectious Diseases Program at Duke-NUS Non-Medical School, along with a US pharmaceutical company, have just had their COVID-19 vaccine approved for clinical trials.